Hi Stampers, welcome. I am Pat Fairless from Fairless Stampin Flair, and today um, we're going to do some watercoloring. I love to watercolor. I find it very relaxing, but it is something you want to do to when you have time and you can just relax with it and play and just have fun. So let's go ahead and get started and we'll show you what I'm going to make, or I should say attempt to make. So I do have to sit down. Um, I've not been able to figure out how to do watercoloring standing up. It just doesn't work very well for me. But this is the card that we're going to watercolor this beach scene on the background. And it took me a couple attempts to get this the way I liked it. I'm going to show you my first attempt just for grins. I had a whole different idea in mind initially. I was just going to do like a wash of 3 colors, and it was looking kind of bland and blah. So I started over, and what I determined was I needed to leave more white. So if you look at this one, you can see I haven't colored any of these totally solid. They have white left in them. So, and then I added a little more shading, which helped. So I actually have a couple pieces of watercolor paper handy in case the first one doesn't go too well. We can start again. And I did the sand with gray granite. So the colors I used here, this was gray granite. This was Night of Navy, believe it or not, a very washed down Night of Navy. And then the sky is Misty Moonlight and Petal Pink. So I'm going to use those colors, and I'm going to start at the bottom and work up. Doesn't matter. You could do the sky first. Doesn't really matter which area you want to do first. I can't see my phone very well, so I'm trying to make sure I'm staying in frame here. And I'm going to use the large water painter brush for this. You could use whichever one you feel comfortable with. When you're doing a larger area, I like to use this one. So, and there's a couple ways you can get your ink. You can either squeeze your ink pad and get some ink in the cover, or add some with an ink refill. Since I have some in here, let's just go ahead and use what's in here. I was going to use my acrylic block, but we'll do that for the others because I forgot there's already ink in here. Now, I want to water this down, and it's always good to have a scrap of watercolor paper handy, which I did not grab, so let me grab a scrap. Right here behind me. Any scrap will work, but when you're watercoloring, you can get lots of different shades. So I like to have a scrap, and you could test it on your grid paper or on a piece of white cardstock, but to really get truer to the color, just grab a piece of watercolor paper to use as you're testing. So I'm going to squeeze some water in here and stir it up. It's better to start with too little, otherwise you have to add more. And we're just going to scribble on here and see if I like that color. I think it's a tad bit dark for my first layer. So I'm going to put another drop in and just kind of try it again. Didn't do a lot, so let's just add more. Add a drop at a time until you're happy with it. And you're probably not seeing a whole lot of difference, but I can see it. So we're going to go with this. And what I'm first going to do is just kind of figure out where I want my lake water line to be. And I'm just going to put it kind of like on an angle here. Now, to make it look like more like water, let's just go ahead and do a kind of a wash on here all over. We'll get a little bit more. And I'll come back later to add some depth. I don't want it too solid, so I'm going to leave some white. But along the edges, and this is going to get covered up with my chair, so I'm not too concerned about this area. But instead of having such a smooth line, if you think about the water rolling in on a lake or the ocean, it doesn't come in a perfectly straight line, right? So I just kind of did this, flipped some little edges out here and there, just to make it look a little more irregular. And then I went back, you see my ink, and I picked up a little bit more ink to get it a little bit darker. And this part of the water is darker. And we'll test it. Yeah, it's a little darker. So I'm just going to kind of put some lines on here. Kind of like sand dune lines. Think of them that way. So that it, again, doesn't look all too consistent. You want some variation. And when it dries, it will look different. And it'll also look different once you start putting the other things on here. But I'm going to call that good. Okay? And I say I call it good and I keep playing with it, right? The one thing you want to make sure you have handy is some nice clean paper towels. Squeeze some water until this is basically clean. And I'm going to put this aside. And I also have a little jar of water handy, little glass, that I can kind of speed up the process, and I don't have to squeeze quite so hard, but you do want to squeeze and just brush till you make sure it's clean. So next we're going to take our Night of Navy, and this one I have a clean cover. So this is probably, you could squeeze and try to get ink in there. I don't have enough strength in my hands to squeeze these particular ink pads. So I like to just pick up some ink on the corner, not the whole thing, because then I can put, I'm going to set this out of my way. This is now my ink palette. And I like to squeeze some water over here off from the ink. Because like I said, for this Night of Navy, we want this very light, right? Got my little test paper here handy. And I'm just going to pick up a little bit of ink and bring that into my water. And I probably need a little more. I don't want to run out. And let's test that. Okay, I think that's plenty dark. Let's just give it a little bit more because I can always go back and darken it. So now what I like to do, and my chair is in the wrong place, I need to turn this for my right hand. I kind of want to go through and create my skyline. Now that is going to be relatively straight unless you're going to build some islands coming out or something. But I want to lay that down so I know where that is. And then I'm just going to come and I'm going to take my brush and just kind of flick it. And I'm also going to flick it into the sand because that'll make it look after that irregularity, right? I don't want that to be a really nice straight line. So there's my background. Now, we need to add some highlights of a little bit darker. So I'm going to just pick up a little more ink and darken this up a little bit. And again, now I can test it on my other piece here. And that's pretty good. So let's take this and just kind of put some lines down in here. Nothing, don't have to be, you're just kind of flicking to add some highlights. And remember, every one of these is going to look different. And you can see, hopefully, I did add some light. I mean, I did leave some white. I'm going to try to get just a little bit finer lines in a couple places. I'm going to get a couple of them that are a little bit darker. So I'm actually going to pick some up from here. Try not to get too much. And I think I should quit playing. Okay? This is a little wetter than my first card was, and you can see the water is running. Now, if you think it's getting too dark or you don't like what it's doing, just take a clean paper towel and blot it, and that will stop the water from running. But this actually, I don't mind that look. It looks like there's some steam or something coming off the water a little bit. I lightened that up a little more than I wanted. So I'm just going to go in here and just add a couple of darker highlights. Okay, we're going to quit playing. Sometimes you can overplay, and I am really good at overplaying. So now I'm going to squeeze this until I get all the blue out. Okay, I think we're pretty good. Yep, we're good. So now I'm going to do the sky, and I'm actually going to start with Petal Pink. And I'm going to use my palette, acrylic, aka acrylic block, to pick up some color. And again, I want this pretty light, so we're going to squeeze some water. This is why sometimes having water handy, you can just scoop it out of the dish easier than squeezing. And if you start to run low on water, then you got your water handy. So let's color this up a bit. Petal Pink is light to start with, so I don't have to water it down as much because I want it to be pink, but probably not quite that pink. Okay, so let's just pull a little into this one. Put a little more water in here. Okay, that's pretty good. So I'm going to add some pink along the skyline. So just kind of washing across there, and then I'm going to add a few little highlights kind of here and there. And for now, I'm going to call that, you can probably see I'm picking up a little more ink just to darken it a bit. I'm going to brush it into the water a bit. The blue, the water, which meant to be water. And I'm going to set this aside because we're going to use this again. I can close up my ink before I lay something in there. And now I'm going to grab the Misty Moonlight and kind of fill in, clean my brush out of most of the pink if I can. It's amazing how light that is and how much you still will get out of your brush when you squeeze it. And one thing I kind of like to do is I squeeze, and then while I still have it squeezed, I put it into my clean glass of water because that'll pick up clean water into it. Otherwise, you will see your water in here, especially if you're working with darker colors, will turn to blue or whatever color you're working on. And if that's the case, then my recommendation is empty your painter and refill it with clean water. Like I said, this is something you're going to want to play with, practice, just have fun. Just take some scraps and practice and figure out how you want to brush your ink. With watercolor paper, you do have plenty of time. You can play with it until you get it the way you want it. I'm going to dab this. There's still a little water on that pink, so let me see. And this is pretty good right now, so I'm going to work with this because the sky I don't want too dark. So we're going to kind of just scribble across here. And again, I'm making sure I try to leave some white, not worrying about getting it a consistent, like if you were making a color wash. And you can take your blue into the pink. And I think I'm going to put a little bit of blue down over this pink highlight horizon here. And I'm going to pick up just a touch more dark, just to give a little bit of contrast here and there. Don't want a lot. And that's probably more than I want. So I'm going to dab it and pick some of it up. And that's more the way I want it to look, kind of blended. And you could see, maybe you probably saw it was starting to run because my brush is quite wet. You can always, if you wanted more of a dry wash, just scribble your brush till it's pretty dry. And then when you pick it up, it's gonna, I think that's how I did it more on the first card. I had my dry brush fairly dry. So if you do that and then pick it up, you can see it's automatically going to leave more white. Okay, if you don't have your brush too wet, just depends on how you want it to look. So that's good. Now it is a little damp, but we're going to go ahead. I'm going to close up my ink pads before I lay something in them. And I'm just going to put I'm going to clean this one last time because on the inside I have a little bit of a wash I'm going to do on the inside of the card. So I want to get this blue out of there. So I need to squeeze it pretty good to get that, which for me takes a couple hands. Okay. So I'm going to get my wet paper towels out. So let's go ahead and put the card together. I'll fan this around a little bit, see if I can get it drier. And I'll just go ahead. This is a Misty Moonlight mat, so I'm just going to go ahead and attach it to this. I can find my Stampin' Seal here. Make sure I got some on there. Yep, it did what it did. Move it ahead. Actually, kind of this. I'm getting near the end of my roll again, I think. There we go. So it doesn't really look like much right now, I think we would have to admit. But once we get it decorated, it'll look a lot better. So I'm going to decorate the whole thing and then I'll put it on my card front. And instead of using this chair today, I'm going to use this chair. I like this chair. I hadn't used this one much. Oh, look at that, I ink on myself. Hadn't used this one much, so I wanted to try it on this card. This card will be on my website tomorrow. And I am going to see if I can get some of this ink off my hand before I pick it up on something that I don't want it on. I'm just using my water painter because it's water-based ink, right? Now I could probably also get my chair out before I trip over it, knock it over. Okay, so I'm going to put the chair on here and I'm going to pop this up on dimensionals. And then we'll add some grass, some seagulls, and some birds, and we will be done. Once your watercoloring is done, I have the item stamped and cut out, so it'll go pretty quick. So I think right about there will work. And I've got a couple grass that I have made, some birds and a seagull and a sentiment. So let's go ahead and add our grass. I'm going to stick the one grass behind this back leg of the tree or the tree, the chair. What am I saying? I don't know. I like to bend these a little bit just so they get a little lift in them. Grass is never perfectly straight, right? Especially this kind of grass. So we're going to stick that behind the chair. And probably right about there. We can even put it a little bit higher, maybe, because the other one's going to be over top of it. So let's do that. And then we'll put this one on with dimensionals. And I'll make sure I get the dimensionals in the right place because I don't want them there. So we'll stick one on the bottom. And I'll probably cut one down in half to get it up in here so I can go over that. So I'll just cut one of these in half. These are the mini dimensionals. And then I can get it way up here. It's going to get support from the chair. I just want to kind of adhere it down. And it's sticking out a little bit, so let's just snip that off. So I've got one on each side of the chair leg. And again, let's just curl it just a bit with our fingers. And we'll go ahead and attach a seagull over here, I think. And mini dimensionals will work for him or her, I don't know. I'm going to show you a trick I did when I stamped these seagulls and these birds. Should be maybe a little further away from the tree. I don't know if it's so smart to pull this off because it is still a little damp. Let's just put them a little further away from the chair. And I have this sentiment from this water. This is the, by the way, I guess I didn't tell you, this is the Relaxing Waterside Bundle. Stamps and dies. It's part of the Waterside Retreat, I think it's called, suite of products. Such a pretty stamp set. And sweet, actually. So let's put this up here. I know I got a couple seagulls somewhere here. And can you see? I'm going to see, maybe you can see, maybe you can't. I'll bring it up close. Put it on my, and I put it on this other piece of watercolor paper I have. This one's a little darker than this one, not too bad. A couple of them, when I stamped them the first time, I used smoky slate on these, which is kind of a bluish gray. And I'm going to show you with the seagull, because I had the same problem with the birds as I did the seagull. So I'll just show you with the seagull. Scrap paper pad, here we go. So I inked it up on my smoky slate, like I normally would, tap, 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 and stamped. Well, that's kind of dark for a seagull. Seagulls are basically white to all intents and purposes, right? So this is a little bit darker than I wanted it. So what I did was I grabbed a spoon and I kind of tried to push some ink. Can you see how it's lighter where I'm pushing this ink away from this corner? I just thought I'd show you this because it's a good way to get a little bit lighter image. I had stamped off, tried that first. You can see how the difference is. I didn't probably get it as cleaned off as I should have, but it is significantly lighter than the other one. Now, when I stamped off, it was too light. So I'm going to go over here where I didn't scrape ink away, and we're going to stamp. pretty dark, right? Now that's stamped off. Now I can stamp again. It was too light. So I wasn't happy with the stamping off. I tried it stamping off lightly, stamping off normally, and finally decided to push some ink out of the way. My ink pad is fairly well inked, so I did that with the seagull and the little birds. So let's go ahead and add these, and I'm gonna curl their wings with my fingers once again. Again, birds' wings are never totally flat. And this one, I am just going to put a little bit of liquid adhesive down here and have him kind of swimming over the water. So let's put him there. Probably should have laid them all on there first. And then this one, because I want him up here kind of partially covering my little reading, I'm going to put him with a tiny dimensional down here. And I'm going to use that other half that I cut. And we will curl his wings as well. And that way his wing can come up and kind of slightly go over the sentiment. So there we go. Now I put this all on with dimensionals on my card front. You wouldn't have to. If you watch me, you know I'm a dimensional-aholic. I like lots of dimensionals. I think you can turn a very simple card into a very beautiful card just by adding dimension to it. You don't need to do a lot of fancy stuff. But if there's depth and dimension in the card, it just is more pleasing to the eye for some reason. So just, oops, I guess I should put it on right side up, right? That would be the best thing to do. I'm sure you've all done it too. And there we go. This compares, and you can see, I have to hold it a little bit further away. The watercoloring is very different. This one I got it a little bit darker, I think, the water. This one I have a little rougher sea look because of the way I dry brushed it with a drier brush. And I've got ink down here where I don't want it, so I'm gonna cover that up. Oh, I got ink over there. But let's finish up the inside quickly. So I'm just gonna stamp some grass down in the corner, and we will stamp another seagull. So let's just put some grass down here. That is Mossy Meadow. I've got stuff laying everywhere. Now I have to find my smoky slate again for my seagull. And I would really like to have this a little bit cleaner if I can. Use my paper towel, dab him off. And I'm going to scrape my ink just one more time because it will seep back. So I want to keep that relatively light. So we'll brush that out of the way with my little spoon. And we're going to stamp him down here close to the grass. And it looks like he's kind of floating in here, right? So I am going to take my, oh, that was not good. I just said I have to move things out of the way because I lay things in it, and I just laid my card in one of my inky ink palettes. Not good. So I don't want much color on here. I am just going to pick up some of this that we used before, because I really don't want this one to be too wet. This is regular basic white. And we'll just take this and just scribble a little bit down here, just so it looks like he's standing on something. And I have to be careful not to go really over his feet because it'll make that run. The water will. So, but that kind of grounds them, right? And then all we need is a little sentiment on here. So let's go ahead and stamp the sentiment. What shall I use? I'm going to use Night of Navy. No, maybe I'll use Misty Moonlight. Won't be quite so dark. Because we're going to mat it on Misty Moonlight, so I'll just do that. And today is your day, and this comes from the same stamp set. Which I can show you if you're not familiar with it. These are the dies. The one chair that I have on the first card uses this chair die, and this one is in two pieces. And you can either use this back, which sits on here, or this back. This chair is more straight facing. This one, that I used today, you can see is more of a side angle, and it's a little bit larger. And then you've got the dies for the grass, there's books, there's coffee cups, cattails, lots of cute dies. And the stamp set has this chair. So on today's card, this card, I did stamp this I stamped the image onto the designer series paper. This is Country Woods designer series paper. It's been around for a while. Last time I checked, it was still available. It's awesome if you love all different kinds of wood grains, especially some wood grains with some colors in it. Last time I checked, it was still available. I haven't checked in the last week or so. But then you can see we've got this bird, and here's a book and a coffee cup that will sit on the arm of your chair, and some sentiment. So I use this sentiment, and today is your day. So let's go ahead and put this on our mat, Misty Moonlight. And get it on the inside of the card, and our card will be done. Again, my main purpose today was I wanted to give you some tips and tricks for watercoloring, and I hope maybe you learned a little something that you hadn't known or thought of. Maybe you have never tried watercoloring. You can use regular painter's brushes. You don't need to have water painters. Just have your little glass of water and dip your brush in the water. But there we go. So we now have two of these cards. I'm going to get this dirty, messy thing kind of cleaned out a little bit, and we will lay them side by side. And you can see they are similar, but they are not the same. I challenge you to try to make two of the same when you watercolor. I've never been able to do it. But I think they're both pretty, and that's the joy of watercoloring, right? I got a little more pink up here in the sky than I do here. Here I kept it a little more down low. Here's a little less down low. The water certainly looks different. The ground looks different. It all looks different. The chairs are different. The seagull looks the same. All right, let's flip our camera back and we will wrap this up. All right, I hope you enjoyed that, and I really do hope you give watercoloring a try. I love to try to do the scenes, but you can watercolor images that you've stamped. It gives them a nice soft look. You can do a color wash background, which is what I originally had planned to do. And then I just wasn't happy with it, so I played and fussed a little bit more. And I hope you, I'd love to know what you think of the card. Leave me a comment. That'd be great to hear what you think about it. So a thumbs up. How about a thumbs up? That'd be good, right? But let's wrap this up. Have a great day and a great weekend. The weekend's coming. And until we see you next week with something else, have a great day. God bless.